Okay, so today we're going to start chapter 2. We're going to cover as much as we can of section 1, and we're going to be analyzing conditional statements. So a conditional statement has two parts. It has a hypothesis and it has a conclusion. This is all logic based. So we're going to be writing our sentence in if-then form. So for example, if you study, then you will get an A. Now, this statement doesn't necessarily have to be true. Just because you study doesn't mean you're going to get the A, but chances are you probably will. So in red, this is my hypothesis. And it's usually represented by the letter P. And then in blue, this is my conclusion. And it's represented by the letter Q. And again, these if-then statements do not need to be true. And they're all logic-based. Next slide is negation of a statement. And this is going to be the opposite of the original statement. So for example, if your original statement is, it is raining, then the negation of that is, it is not raining. So you're making it opposite. If it doesn't have the word not in there, you would add it. If it had the word not in there, then you could take that away. Like in the second example, the shirt is not red is the original statement. So to negate that, we're going to take out the word not. So the shirt is red. So it's the opposite of the original. That's how you negate a statement. The next vocabulary word is converse. And the converse is formed by changing the order of the hypothesis and the conclusion. You're going to flip it. The conclusion is going to come and be the hypothesis, and the hypothesis will move to be the conclusion. So your original statement, if you study, then you will get an A. Then the converse, you're going to flip it, and you're going to say, if you got an A, then you studied. So originally, on that very first slide, we always did the hypothesis in red. So the original one was, if you study, and then the conclusion was, you will get an A. Now we're moving that, and it's now our hypothesis, and then we take the conclusion, and we're putting it here. Now, you can change like the tense of the verb or whatever to make it grammatically sound okay. Notice how I changed the word study to studied. So if you need to change that, you can. So this is just a switch of the order. So we're switching it up. We're flipping it and putting the conclusion at the beginning now and the hypothesis at the end. This is the converse. Next is the inverse. And the inverse is formed by negating both the hypothesis and the conclusion. So again, my original statement here. Again, remember you have your hypothesis, which follows the word if, and then you have your conclusion that follows the word then. So if I take my hypothesis and I add in the word not, or in this case, to make it sound grammatically correct, if you didn't study, then you didn't get an A. So you're negating it or making it the opposite. So this was my conclusion. So again, we're adding in we're negating it. And then same thing here, we negated it. Longest word, and it has the most work to it, contrapositive. And this is going to be formed by writing the converse and then negating both the hypothesis and the conclusion. So again, my original statement, if you study, then you will get an A. So here is my hypothesis again, here is my conclusion. We have to negate it and flip it. So first we're going to flip it and write the converse. So if you got an A, then you studied, and then we take that converse and then we negate it and it becomes the contrapositive. So if you didn't get an A, then you didn't study. Now, if you want to negate it first and then flip it, that's fine, but just remember you need 2 steps here. Flip and negate. Is called the biconditional statements. So if the conditional statement and its converse, if they're both true, then the statement can be written as a biconditional statement. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out the word if, and we're going to take out the word then, and we're going to join the hypothesis and the conclusion with the words if and only if. Now, if when you're writing these sentences, if you want to abbreviate this as IFF, all know that that stands for these 4 words, if and only if. So any definition can be written as a biconditional statement. So here's our example. If an angle has a measure of 90 degrees, then it is a right angle. So we want to first state the converse, decide is that converse true, and if it is, then we're going to write a biconditional. Now your biconditional can be written either from the original conditional statement or the converse. Now we first have to double check that our original conditional statement is true. So if an angle has a measure of 90 degrees, then it is a right angle. That is a definition of a right angle. So that is true. So now my first step is I'm going to be stating the converse. So I believe in your notes I added a blank page. So I'm going to go to the next page. And I'm going to write the converse. So the converse is if an angle is a right angle. Remember, for the converse, we're flipping. Then it has a measure of 90 degrees. That's the converse. Now we have to decide, is this true or false? So if it's a right angle, then it has a measure of 90 degrees. This is true. So because both my conditional and converse are true statements, I now can turn either the converse or the original conditional into a biconditional. And I'm going to show you based off the original and based off the converse. So since I have the converse right here, I'm going to go ahead and write my biconditional. Biconditional statement. And again, I'm going to base it off of the converse first. So when you write the biconditional, we take out the words if and then. So I'm going to write now, my biconditional is going to be an angle. So I'm taking out this word, is a right angle. And now I take out the word then, and this is where I put if and only if it has a measure of 90 degrees. So we've taken out the word if at the beginning, we've taken out the word then, and then we've replaced it with if and only if. Now, if you don't want to write these 4 words, you can also, in place here, just put IFF. Now, this is your biconditional based off the converse. We can do it also based off the original statement. So let me go ahead and do that. So, same thing, biconditional, and we're going to base it off of the conditional or the original. So our original if then. So based off the original, we're going to say an angle has a measure of 90 degrees. And I'm going to do it over here so it's not in the colored area. And then if and only if, so this time I'll just use the abbreviation, if and only if it is a right angle. So we take out the word if, we take out the word then, and then where the then was, we replace it with if and only if. And this is a biconditional. Remember the original statement, that conditional and its converse both have to be true statements in order to create a biconditional. Okay, so the next slide, this is everything that we just covered. So instead of saying if P, then Q, they would instead show the direction that it happens. So again, remember P is your hypothesis, Q is the conclusion. So for just a normal conditional, they would show a P and then an arrow, and that would be the flow of the sentence. The converse, remember you would flip it. So if Q, then P, you would show Q pointing to the P. The inverse, or to negate something, it's this little wave looking thing. So this means not P, then if not P, then not Q. And then again, contrapositive, you flip it. So again, it's got the little wave. If not Q, then not P. And then biconditional, it can go in either direction. So that's why it's got the arrow pointing this way. Just be aware of the symbols in case you see this on a standardized test. Most of the stuff we'll give you won't have these symbols. It's going to be written in words. So let's try some examples. So the first one says use red to identify the hypothesis and blue to identify the conclusion. Then rewrite the conditional statement in if-then form. So I'm going to go ahead and write it in if-then form, and then when I put it in my if-then form, I'm going to be writing the hypothesis in red, and I'm going to write my conclusion in blue. So let's go ahead and do the first one. All birds have feathers. I need to turn this into an if-then statement. So if an animal is a bird, then it has feathers. So this is my hypothesis. This is my conclusion. The hypothesis does not include the word if. The conclusion does not include the word then. It's the words that follow those two keywords. Okay, the next one. You are in Texas if you are in Houston. So we're going to set this up. So if, and then you are in Houston, then you are in Texas. So again, see where they followed the word if. This time the hypothesis was at the end, and here was the conclusion. So the hypothesis is going to follow the word if. All right, so example 2, let P be you are the guitar player. So that's going to be my hypothesis. My conclusion, let Q be, you are a musician. It wants us to write each statement in words and then determine, is the statement that you wrote for the conditional, the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive, is it true or false? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to the next slide and I'll fill these in. To fill in, I told you, let P be you are the guitar player and Q be you are the musician. So now we're also going to add in the words if and then. So part A, did you guys have things? Okay, so first we're going to do the conditional statement. And they told us that that was P, if P, then Q. So we're going to use what they said. So again, it's written as if P, then Q. So on the previous slide, I had highlighted the P, and so if you are a guitar player, then and now the conclusion, you are a musician. And then we have to decide, is this true or false? And this is true because guitar players are musicians. If it asks you to explain, that's what you would say. But if it just asks for true or false, then that's all you have to put. Okay, now we're going to do the converse. So remember, the converse is where we flip. So this would be if Q, then P. So my converse is going to be if, and then I'll write in blue, you are a musician. Actually, yeah, I'll show it because that was the original. If you are a musician. So now, remember, this becomes the hypothesis now. And then, I don't want to highlight. Then you are a guitar player. So now we have to decide, is this true or false? And this would be false because not all musicians play the guitar. For example, you could play the piano, you could play a flute, any other instrument, drums. So this would be false because, again, just because you're a musician doesn't mean you play guitar. Next, we're going to do the inverse. And remember, this is where we're going to not the hypothesis and not the conclusion. And we're going to keep it in the same order. So for example, it's going to be if not P, then not Q. Let's go ahead and write this one. So if you are not in red. I'll just highlight it. If you are not a guitar player, then I'm going to go down here below the colors. And I switch colors here. Then you are not a musician. So again, true or false, and we're going to say that this is false. So even if you don't play the guitar, you could still be a musician. Okay, last one, contrapositive. Again, remember, this is the longest one. So this one, remember, we're going to flip it to the converse and negate. So for the contrapositive, this one is going to be negate and flip. So if not Q, then not P. Let's try it. So if you are not a musician, then you are not a guitar player. And this would be true. So a person who's not a musician cannot be a guitar player. Homework, if it asks you just to write the contrapositive, you're just going to write this. Now, if it says to determine if it's true or false and explain, then you have to write all this. If it just says true or false, then you could just put true or false. So you'll just have to read the instructions on what it's asking for. You won't have to give me all of this stuff over here. You would just give me the sentence that I highlighted in green here.
Miss Corey, can you go up a little bit, please?
Yes. Okay, example 3. They want us to rewrite the definition of perpendicular lines as a single biconditional. So again, we can highlight our hypothesis. Two lines intersect to form a right angle. That's going to be our P. And then our conclusion, they are perpendicular lines. And that's our Q. Again, remember, the hypothesis does not include the word if. It's all the words afterwards. And then the conclusion is all the words after the word then. So P then Q. And then remember, that's for the bicondition. That's for the conditional. So this is our conditional. And then the converse, remember, we flip it, and then it's Q then P. So let me go ahead. So this would be P, and then Q, and then here I could highlight. All right, so let's go ahead and write the biconditional. I can write it either based off of, let me go ahead and write the converse first. So I would flip it. So if two lines are perpendicular lines, then they intersect, to form a right angle. Now we can write the biconditional because both of these are true statements. So remember for the biconditional, we would show the P and then the arrow and then the Q, because it could go either way. So what I'll go ahead and do is write it from the original conditional. So I'm going to say let me do it in red, because I'm going to do it off the original. So 2 lines intersect. Remember, for the biconditional, we drop the word if to form a right angle. And then this is where we're going to put in the words if and only if. And again, if you want to abbreviate that is as IFF, you can do that. And then we'll add in our conclusion. They are perpendicular lines. The symbol for perpendicular would be an upside down T. So that's how we can write a biconditional from that given conditional. Let's try one more. So the last example, again, is to rewrite the pair of conditionals as a biconditional. So if M is between L and N, then LM plus MN equals LN. So this is our segment addition postulate. And now the converse of that is here. If LM plus MN equals LN, then M is between L and N. They are both true. So if we base it off of the original conditional, so this is our converse in blue, and then here in red, this would be our original conditional. So what we can do is, based off the original, I can say M is between L and N if and only if LM plus MN equals LN. And then I can do it based off of that converse. I could say that LM plus MN equals LN if and only if M is between L and N. So that's how I can take those, because they are both true, and write them as a biconditional. Remember, the biconditional, you drop the word if, you drop the word then, and then where the then was, you're going to put in the words if and only if. And again, the IFF is abbreviation for those 4 words. So that is it for section 2.1.